I'm 82 years old, and I have finally run out of places to hide from myself. When you live this long, you start to feel the weight of what you didn't do more than what you did. The house gets quieter, the phone rings less, the evenings stretch out, and there's nothing left to distract you from your...
For 40 years, I avoided my feelings. I didn't call it that at the time. I called it being responsible. I called it staying strong. I told myself I was practical, steady, dependable. I thought that was what a good man was supposed to be. Now I sit here in this small living room with a clock that ticks louder than it used to, and I can see the truth. I wasn't steady. I was hiding. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. At 82, sympathy doesn't change much. I'm telling you because when you get close to the end, you start wanting to leave something honest behind. When I was in my 20s, I felt everything too deeply. I fell in love hard. I worried hard. I was afraid of losing people, afraid of failing, afraid of not being enough. I remember lying awake at night beside my first apartment window, listening to traffic, thinking about all the ways life could fall apart. It felt unbearable. So, somewhere along the line, I made a quiet decision. I decided it would be easier not to feel so much. I got a job in accounting, steady work. Numbers made sense to me. They behaved. They balanced if you were careful. There was comfort in that. I met my wife Helen when I was 27. She had a laugh that filled a room. She felt things openly. If she was happy, you knew it. If she was hurt, you knew that too. At first, I admired that about her. It made me feel alive. But after we married and life settled into routines, I started pulling back. Not in a dramatic way, just little things. If she asked, "Are you okay?" I'd say, "I'm fine," even when I wasn't. If she wanted to talk about a disagreement, I'd tell her it wasn't worth arguing about. If she cried, I'd pat her shoulder and say, "It'll be all right," instead of sitting with her in it. I told myself I was keeping the peace. We had 2 children, a boy and a girl. I worked long hours. I told myself I was doing it for them. Every morning I left before they were fully awake. Every evening I came home tired, carrying the day with me like a coat I couldn't take off. My son once asked me to come watch him play baseball on a Thursday afternoon. I remember looking at my calendar and thinking about a client meeting. "Maybe next time," I said. There were many next times. I missed most of them. Not because I didn't care. I cared deeply. I just convinced myself that caring didn't require showing up. I thought providing was enough. When my daughter was 14, she stopped telling me about her day. I noticed it, but I didn't ask why. I assumed it was just teenage moodiness. The truth is, I was relieved. Relieved not to have to navigate her feelings. Relieved not to risk saying the wrong thing. I didn't know how to sit in messy emotions, so I stayed in the tidy world of tasks and responsibilities. Years passed like that. Promotions came, raises, a bigger house, a second car. People called me reliable, solid, dependable. Inside, I felt muted. Not unhappy exactly, just distant from everything. Even joy felt controlled, measured. When my father died, I stood at his funeral and felt almost nothing. I shook hands, I accepted condolences, I drove my mother home, I handled the paperwork. That night, Helen asked me if I was all right. I said, "I'm fine." I hadn't cried. I told myself that meant I was strong. Now I wonder what it would have meant if I had allowed myself to break.
The cost of avoiding feelings isn't dramatic at first. It doesn't explode your life, it just thins it out. Conversations become shorter, apologies get postponed, hugs become brief. You think you're preventing pain, but you're also preventing closeness. In my 40s, Helen tried to talk to me one evening after the kids had gone to bed. She said she felt lonely in our marriage. I remember sitting at the kitchen table, staring at a stack of unpaid bills. I told her she was overthinking things. I said we had a good life. I listed the practical proofs. She looked at me for a long time. "She doesn't need a good life on paper," she said. "I need you." I didn't know how to give her that, so I went back to work the next morning as if the conversation had never happened. We didn't fight much. People would probably say we were a calm couple, but calm isn't the same as connected. Our children grew up, they moved out, the house got quieter. Helen and I sat across from each other at dinner, talking about the news, about neighbors, about the weather. We didn't talk about fear or regret or dreams we had given up. I thought that was normal. I thought that was adulthood. When I turned 60, I retired. I imagined it would bring us closer, more time together, long mornings, walks in the evening. Instead, I felt exposed. Without work to hide behind, there was nothing between me and my own thoughts. I didn't know how to talk to my wife without the buffer of schedules and obligations. She tried. She would ask, "What are you thinking about?" And I would shrug. "Nothing," I'd say. But it wasn't nothing. It was everything. It was the weight of years I had spent standing just outside my own life. Avoiding feelings don't make them disappear. It buries them alive. And buried things don't stay quiet forever. I didn't understand that yet, not until the day the doctor called about Helen's test results.
The doctor's voice was calm. Too calm. He said the word cancer, and then kept talking, explaining stages and options and timelines. I listened carefully. I wrote things down. I asked practical questions. I did not cry. When I hung up the phone, Helen was standing in the doorway, watching my face. She already knew. "What did he say?" she asked. I told her everything in clear, steady sentences. Treatment plans, percentages, next appointments. She nodded. Then she sat down slowly in the chair across from me. "I'm scared," she said. And I remember that moment with painful clarity. The way her hands trembled, the way her voice cracked, the way she looked at me, not for information, but for comfort. I reached across the table and held her hand. "It'll be all right," I said. The same words I had been using for 40 years. It was the only language I knew. The months that followed were filled with hospital corridors and quiet drives home. I organized medications. I kept track of bills. I updated our children. I was efficient, reliable, strong, but I was still not present. Helen began to grow thinner, weaker. Some evenings she would cry in the dark, thinking I was asleep. I heard her. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, frozen by something I couldn't name. I wanted to roll toward her, to wrap my arms around her and tell her how much I loved her, how terrified I was of losing her. Instead, I stayed still. I told myself she needed rest. I told myself I would talk to her tomorrow. There are so many tomorrows in a life, until there aren't. One afternoon near the end,
She asked me to sit beside her on the bed. She looked so small. "Did you ever love me the way I loved you?" she asked. I felt something crack open inside my chest. Of course I loved her. I loved her from the first time she laughed at one of my nervous jokes. I loved her when she held our newborn son. I loved her every ordinary Tuesday of our life. But love that is never spoken starts to feel imaginary. "I did," I said quietly. She searched my face, as if trying to decide whether to believe me. "I wish you had let me see it," she whispered. That sentence has followed me for years. She died 3 weeks later. The house was unbearably quiet after the funeral. People came and went. My children stayed for a few days, then returned to their own lives. I don't blame them. I taught them how to live at a distance. The first night alone, I walked into our bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. Her side was empty. The pillow still held the shape of her head, and for the first time in decades, I let myself feel everything at once. Grief is not neat. It is not controlled. It does not respond to reason. I cried so hard I could barely breathe. I cried for her. I cried for the years I had kept my heart behind a locked door. I cried for every time I said "I'm fine" when I wasn't. I cried because there was no one left to finally open up to. That is the price. You think you are protecting yourself by staying composed, by staying practical. You think you'll open up later, when the timing is better, when things are less busy, when you feel more certain. But later has a way of disappearing. After Helen died, I tried to be closer to my children. I really did. I called more often. I asked more questions. Sometimes I even told them I missed them. They were polite, kind, but there is a wall there that I helped build. My son speaks to me with respect, but not intimacy. My daughter visits, but she keeps parts of her life private. I don't blame them. Children learn what love looks like by watching. They watched a man who provided, who fixed things, who paid bills on time. They did not watch a man who said, "I'm scared," or "I was wrong," or "I need you." Now at 82, my body is slower. I move carefully. I nap in the afternoons whether I plan to or not. Time feels different, smaller. I spend long hours thinking about the version of myself who was 35, who was 50, who was 60. I want to sit him down and tell him that feelings are not a weakness. They are not an inconvenience. They are the whole point. Success didn't keep me warm at night after Helen was gone. The house we paid off doesn't answer back when I speak. The awards from work are in a box somewhere in the closet. I don't even remember what most of them were for. What I remember are the moments I stepped away from vulnerability because it felt uncomfortable. The apology I never finished. The hug I cut short. The "I love you" I assumed she already knew. If you're listening to me now, I'm not here to tell you what you must do. I don't have that authority. I only know what it feels like to sit in a quiet house at 82 and understand that you were present for your life in body, but not always in heart. If you love someone, let them see it. Not in grand gestures, just in small, honest words, in sitting beside them when they're afraid, in admitting when you're hurt instead of pretending you're above it.
I thought I had more time to become that kind of man. I was wrong. There is still some time left for me. Not much, but some. I try now. I tell my children I love them before hanging up the phone. It feels awkward sometimes. Late. But I say it anyway. I visit Helen's grave once a week. I talk to her there. I tell her things I should have said decades ago. The wind moves through the trees, and I stand there feeling both grateful and ashamed. Grateful that I loved her at all. Ashamed that I didn't show her enough. At this age, you don't look for redemption. You look for honesty. This is mine. If this meant something to you, if it stirred something you've been setting aside, don't wait too long to face it. I waited 40 years. And now at 82, I finally understand that the hardest part of avoiding your feelings is not the years you survive without them. It's the people you lose because you never let them see your heart. I can't go back. All I can do is sit here in this quiet room and tell you the truth before my own time runs out.